Okay. It's incrementing, thank God. Hey, I don't know what the hell's going on with my equipment recently. I've been having problems putting a freaking lavalier mic on my shirt, which just shouldn't happen. Also, I can't for the life of me find any of my 256 gig SD cards, and my normal cameras will only shoot on those cards for more than will only shoot on like lesser cards for more than a minute before they just stop recording for God knows what reason. These 64 gig cards are faster than the 256 ones that I have, yet only the slower ones work. I don't know and I don't care. I'm going to use my 2011 camcorder because it at least will shoot in 1080p. So I can do 4K, of course, but what can you do? I just cannot care anymore. I just want to do something. So this is what you got. I want to do a video basically regarding all of my MacBooks and Mac machines of one kind or another. However, because I've been kind of absent lately, trying to figure all this bull crap out, you haven't really seen many of them. You might have seen one or two in a short from like a year ago or something, but there's a lot of new machines that I have. Not new as in made recently, they're like all 10 years old, but new as in new to me, new to the channel. And if this footage looks like it is not level, that's because it isn't. This stand that I'm using, we bought new from Best Buy, and it is not level at all. You literally can't make it level. It's always going to be slightly tilted to one side the entire time, which is really stupid. I don't know why that's still a problem. I don't know how people haven't figured out how to make stands that don't do that crap. But anyway, today I'm going to show you all the MacBooks, tell you their specs, and tell you what year they came out, as kind of an introductory video to this new MacBook series that I want to do, or Mac Extravaganza series. I don't know what to call it. So let's get the big juicies out of the way, because they're massive and I don't want to carry them later, so let's just get them the hell out of the way. The first one, which is also the oldest and has stuff leaning on it, the first Mac I'm going to show you came out in 2006. And that's this. This is a Mac Pro from 2006. Came out the year that Apple changed over to Intel chips. So this has an Intel Xeon quad-core processor in it, and it consumes less power for the same performance as the G5 machines from the previous year, 2005. So, yeah, this thing's almost 20 years old. That's crazy. And of course, still works and has an S-video port. Nuts, right? But I wanted to show you this machine, and I'll do some video gaming on this machine on this channel at some point as well, so glad to get that out of the way. Gaming on old machines is always some of the most interesting stuff you can even try to do with them, because you have to, like, some games will just work out of the box, and others will take a lot of tinkering, downloading old Little Wiggle versions to try to launch the game, to get the game to even launch. So, yeah, that will be showcased in another video. The second oldest machine for Mac Pros anyway came out in 2008. Yeah, this is an 8-core machine, and I got this off of Facebook Marketplace, actually, or maybe it was Gumtree. I don't know, one of those sites. And this lady walked up and just dropped it on my doorstep, gave her $100, and that was that. I even got a wireless keyboard and mouse for my troubles, whoever those are. And the state this machine is currently in is mostly because I've gotten my hands on it. I put a bunch more drives in it that I got at a flea market, or what some people inexplicably call swap meet for some reason. As you can see, it's missing some of the PCIe shield things. That's my fault. They're in the other room. I just haven't bothered putting it back in. Not yet, anyway. I'm not done screwing with PCI Express cards. These aren't actually as heavy as I remember them being. They're still not pleasant to carry around though. The second and now this one I've had for about 2 years, and it's the 2010 model, as opposed to the 8-core one which came out in 2008. Now this one was actually purchased on Facebook Marketplace for $300. This is a 12-core, 2 CPU model. Yeah, they came in models that included 2 CPUs, like 2 individual CPUs that are working together. And each is 6 cores, which makes 12 cores. And this one's from 2010, and later on I discovered it came with a Blu-ray drive, which is really awesome for what I do, piracy. So I've ripped quite a few Blu-rays with this one, and quite happy with it. Stuffed a bunch of drives in it, and well, most of them are still in here. I tried to put Windows on this, and I failed miserably. One day, I'll get it to work. This is also sold to me with an NVIDIA Quadro GPU from like 2015 in it, which is kind of weird. Doesn't work well with Mac OS, but it allowed them to update it further, so that's probably why they did it. I was a dumbass at one point and decided to put the side plate of this machine on without engaging the lever or whatever I did, and I bent the lever mechanism inward. So yeah, the lever doesn't actually go in the way it's supposed to go. But it holds it on, so that's good enough for me. And yes, this machine does look like it was dropped off of a balcony. Not this balcony, but someone definitely dropped it down the stairs or threw it off their balcony, something like that. Someone got really mad at a video game and decided to take it out on their plushie. That's why this is separated. It really shouldn't be. And the graphics card port was actually crushed a little bit. The DVI port for video output was, like, some of the connectors were like bowed inward. Like, it just looked like it had been crushed, and it was barely usable, but somehow I got video out of that thing. That's nuts. Oh man, if you think crushed video cards is bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. I completely forgot to bring that machine out here. I have a machine where the graphics card is literally snapped in half, and that's actually the oldest machine out of all these machines. But I don't have it up here because I am dumb. So yeah. What's the newest one of these? In the tower form factor, anyway. And no, it's not the 2019 one. Come on, not that rich. Actually, in debt. It is the second Mac Pro tower with all the stickers on it. This is a 2012 12-core Mac Pro. It's actually slower than the 2010 because the clock speeds are slightly slower in this machine than the 2010. But other than that, it's basically the exact same machine. However, this came with 40 gigs of RAM, which is kind of crazy. The other Mac Pro 5.1 came with 32, so this is interesting. But actually, if you downgraded to 24 gigs of RAM, you actually got a performance boost. Or so I'm told. So that's a little bit goofy. And with this one, I actually did get the graphics card that would have come with these 2010 models. And in 2020, when I was in desperate need of any phone that worked at all, I decided to at least get a phone that I would be using for quite a few years. So I ended up getting an iPhone 12 Pro, which for once I didn't bring upstairs with me. But I never just have $1,300 laying around, so where the hell did I even get that kind of money? Well, I sold a 2010 Mac Pro, my dad's old 2010 Mac Pro actually, that he used from 2010 to 2013, for $1,000, and I sold it with a 30-inch cinema display, which is a 1440p display that looks really freaking good. And I sold those things for $1,000, and with that money and a lot of begging, I finally had an iPhone again. And why, you ask, was I out of a phone? Blame Android and how poorly built those phones can be, and generally are. I got a Samsung, and that thing was dead within a month. I've dropped my 5S off of a balcony. I've dropped, actually, 10 years ago, I dropped this very iPad, off of my girlfriend's balcony. It's fine. It's been fine for 10 years. This thing is almost 11 years old. It's going to be 11 years old this year. And it still runs perfectly fine, although it is very slightly bent. But that's thin devices for you. Everything is still subject to the laws of physics. So let's get this the hell out of here. This video isn't about the iOS set of devices, the iPods and stuff. That's a different video that I haven't even done yet. Okay, so that was a Mac Pro. Okay, so those were the Tower Mac Pros that I have. Now, there was one other model of Mac Pro that basically threw away the entire line, the entire DNA of the Mac Pro, and turned the Mac Pro into a spaceship. Get used to handling these things, they never do. You think Alienware is spaceship? No, this thing is alien. Forget Alienware. This thing is just alien. And, let me actually zoom in and pick up the SD card I threw. That should work. This is the 2013 Mac Pro. This makes use of a technology by AMD and their GPU line called Crossfire, which, if you've heard of NVIDIA's SLI technology that uses 2 GPUs in tandem to complete the same kind of task, so run like Crysis or Doom or something. Yeah, AMD had that same kind of thing, except they put it in a Mac Pro as well, and along with this thing called FireGL that I have no idea what it is, and no one in the industry right now seems to know what the hell it is either. So I'm just going to assume it's some kind of pro marketing technique, but the design of this is built around basically a wind turbine. In fact, this is called the wind turbine in this family. That's what it was called when my dad was using it from 2013 up until 2022. He now uses the Mac Studio. Yeah, this thing has both D700s in it, which are the highest of the. Did I forget to list the GPUs of the freaking towers? Yeah, I probably did. The 2006 has a 7800, an NVIDIA 7800 GTX, I think. The 2006 Mac Pro has a. The 2006 Mac Pro has a 7800 GTX, I believe. The 2008 Mac Pro has an NVIDIA GeForce 8800 GT, I think. The 2010, crap, I don't even know what this has in it. Oh, okay, I put the card it would have came with when it was new in it. It's the AMD Radeon HD 5770, and the 2012 Mac Pro has that as well. This 2013 Mac Pro, also known as the trash can, was highly criticized, but it had 2 GPUs, and it always came with 2 GPUs. It didn't have them all that didn't, although one was rather crappy and the others were a little bit better. As far as I know, AMD's D line, these notes, was only found on this computer. So this machine came with D300s at a low spec, and D500s in the middle, and then D700s at the high end, or at the top end actually. It's the maximum that these went to. And well, this one has 2 D700s, which are comparatively as powerful as NVIDIA's 1650 desktop GPUs. So not too shabby, but not great, and they have a lot of performance, and they have a lot of compatibility issues and stuff, preventing you from running Doom Eternal, for example, on this, which I imagine would run alright. Which I imagine would run alright on this kind of hardware. But the CPU isn't anything too great. It's a Xeon from 2013, which is about as powerful as the 12-core from 2010, if the numbers say anything anyway. And it's a 6-core Intel Xeon E5, either an E3 or an E5 1650 V2. which is a really weird model number, but yeah, that's what's in here, and pretty interesting. And what's kind of weird about that is, if the specs of all of the stuff in here was to be believed, this machine and its one fan could have to be cooling 600 watts of power consumption. No, that's not happening. And in fact, it doesn't get that high ever. It never will. As soon as you max one of its components out, it drops the performance of the others and throttles and stuff, and where you can't really see that happening because it basically just acts like it's worse than it really is. You can't really, when you're just using the computer for the sake of using the computer, like for normal tasks and such, and maybe a game now and then, you won't really notice it. It's just kind of something to be aware of if you want to play a game that's going to max the system out. Prepare for it not to act like a GTX 1650 and not to act like a gaming CPU from 2018, because that's effectively what this machine would act like under normal conditions. But due to this design, it actually works very well for what this is. It's not really viable today. Although I would have killed to have this kind of stuff in a laptop a couple of years ago. And that gets me into the laptop section of this video. What machine did I buy in 2018 for 120 bucks on eBay that I actually ended up upgrading and using for modded Minecraft up until like 2021, when I got some other machines to use for that instead, thank God. Let's take this thing away. Is this thing not recording? No, okay, it is. Good. So what MacBook did I end up getting in 2018 that I ended up upgrading and using for modded Minecraft for a long while? Well, it was this exact 2010 white MacBook, which was the last MacBook that Apple ever made in this kind of a form factor. In like the chunkiness, like with the DVD drive and stuff, and this MagSafe. In 2012, they discontinued this model of MacBook, and then in 2015, they brought the MacBook back in a completely different form factor, much like the 2015 MacBook Airs and such, just way thinner, smaller, worse, and of course no MagSafe. But this machine, when I got it on eBay for 120 bucks one night in 2018, I did not foresee the amount of pain I would put this through, and this thing would put me through. To be fair, this thing really held up in Minecraft mod packs on Minecraft 1.7.10. I was running hundreds of mods on this thing, and it ran, and it was actually playable, and I was having fun. Yeah, I was having fun. But around when 1.12.2 mods and mod packs reached the hundreds of mods number, that stopped. This stopped being a fun machine to play on. But I was not content with this machine's 2 gigs of RAM. No, I upgraded this machine to 16 gigabytes of memory. And yeah, that made the game run, but running is a bit of an overstatement. I basically tweaked my own mod packs to run on this machine because this machine just wasn't meant for that. And this was before I learned a lot about the performance of old Macs and how much they can differ from one model to another, 1 year to another. The performance can quadruple, which is nuts, but that's exactly what happened in 2011, and I had a 2010 machine. And the base model 2010 machine, no less, with a dying 320 gigabyte spinning hard drive. So I upgraded that to an SSD and upgraded the RAM from 2 gigs, which is really pathetic nowadays, to 16 gigs, which is alright for now, and it was pretty good in 2018. I mean, I had just upgraded my gaming PC to 32 gigs from 16, so yeah. And that was planned originally to only be built with 8 gigs in 2016, so I was comfortable with 16 gigs. However, the graphics of the system, they're truly awful. They're from NVIDIA. but if you've ever heard of the NVIDIA GT210, it doesn't even have the GeForce name. This is like the next year after that, and one step up. Yeah, it's awful. 256 megabytes of shared graphics memory with the rest of the system, which really tears down the graphics performance of this particular computer. And there's many reasons for that, but the main one is if you have the graphics closer to the processor that's using, no, if you have the memory closer to the graphics processor that's using that memory for its tasks, it's going to be much faster than if it was all the way across the CPU and down. So in this machine, it's all the way across the CPU and down. So that's not very good. Also, I kept losing the screws to this. A couple fell out at Scrambles in San Jose, and a couple fell out when my teacher tried to snatch this from me in high school. I think I took out the SSD of this machine and put it in the 2010 Tower Mac Pro back there for better performance on that machine, because this can't really use it. And I put a 750 gig spinning hard disk in this machine, which is better than what it came with. And I put this machine's original 320 gig hard drive into a machine that had a 120 gig hard drive that was also dying. And somehow that 320 gigabyte hard drive reinvigorated that machine and got it running, which is kind of weird because in this machine it was dying. So that's kind of weird. So this machine has an NVIDIA GeForce 320M graphics processor, which is horrible, and an Intel Core 2 Duo 2.4 gigahertz from 2009 actually. So even by this point it was kind of out of date, but yeah, MacBooks wouldn't really get much faster until the latter end of 2010 and the early stages of 2011, which I'll get into shortly. But first, let's talk about the machine that this machine's original hard drive went into. This is a 2008 white MacBook. These also came in black models as well, however, they're pretty rare, and I have a white one with a dead battery. It wasn't dead when I got it, but it quickly died. It just kind of stopped functioning at all, which seems to be a running thing with 2007 to 2008 white MacBooks. They just kind of stop battering. But anyway, this has a 2.1 gigahertz Core 2 Duo processor, which is slightly slower than the previous thing. Oh, actually, one more thing. The disk drive, the ODD, the DVD player in this machine, stopped working. Like it would receive power and everything, and it would spin up. But it would spin up, spin the disk down, spin the disk up, spin the disk down, and then spit it out. And it started doing this on my knee in middle school when I tried to play Earth to Echo with it. It died right there, in my arms. So, yeah, I ended up just taking it out. So the side of this MacBook is very, very noticeably lighter than this side. But on this machine, there is no such issue. There's a DVD drive, and it does work. Although I think it's like a downgraded drive. It's not a super drive. I think it's a combo drive, so it can't write DVDs, but it can read them. But it can write CDs and read CDs. It just can't write DVDs, which is kind of weird. But anyway. And of course, none of these have Blu-ray functionality. That was kind of a new thing in 2008, and would not be built into any Mac that I am aware of. Now, the graphics of this system are pretty freaking piss poor. I think it's a Intel GMA, or graphics something accelerator. Oh no, graphics media accelerator. X3100, I believe, with 144 megabytes of shared system memory, which is really freaking bad, except it'll run GLQuake, which is about all I could expect. And for what it's worth, this machine plays Call of Duty 2 just fine. In fact, I played it competitively, and I was playing it with the trackpad on the MacBook Pro variant of this model, which I'll get into next, and it's actually very similar to this. In fact, it's pretty much just a copy and paste job. for the most part, and it ran pretty well. So the 320M and the 2.4 gigahertz CPU, they can work miracles in some areas, in ways you wouldn't really expect. So I'm sure this might be able to play Call of Duty, but I haven't tried that yet. And of course the battery doesn't work, so I couldn't play it on the go, and that pretty much takes away a lot of the charm of this machine. Also, the speakers of this 2010 MacBook, they do kind of work, but they're so bad because there's no bass and there's no amplifier, because apparently I pounded this machine when it wasn't loading mod packs so hard that I knocked the amplifier chip off of its pads, and it is no longer attached to the motherboard. So the speakers in this machine are now way worse than they were even originally, which was horrible to begin with. In this machine, the speakers are louder, but not by much, and this machine actually does have a subwoofer in it, believe it or not. All of them did, but you know, it doesn't act like one. It just kind of adds some more mid-range. So yeah, I got 2 speakers and then a subwoofer kind of in the middle of the machine. And this machine originally came with a 120 gigabyte hard drive, and I put a 320 gigabyte one in it, which made it run a little bit faster. Actually made it run a lot faster. Like, I was actually able to do stuff on this machine for once. I even installed Windows on it. So yeah, the next machine I'm going to show is basically a copy and paste job between this 2010 MacBook and the MacBook Pro 13-inch line. The MacBook Pro 13-inch line was introduced in 2008, and well, originally had a pretty good set of what the Mac Mini had in it, because, well, the components are in that computer that is pretty minimal to begin with. Might as well put them into a laptop and have that work, because it basically did. But these machines are way more similar than you might think, and the performance is about exactly the same. However, this machine has better cooling than this one, because this one's made out of metal, naturally. So it feels better, and it just kind of is better. So yeah. This is the MacBook Pro that I did actually play Call of Duty 2 on with some friends, and we were killing each other, and I was dominating on the freaking trackpad. So that's kind of nuts. And of course, as soon as I attached the mouse to it, I got worse, and I got killed a bunch of times. Killed by luck. There is some magic with trackpads. And I was used to listening to music on all the other MacBooks that I'm going to show in this video. So when I pulled this machine out and heard the speakers for the first time, since I heard like the speakers in this one before they broke, they are so bad, so much worse than I thought. The speakers in this machine sound like they're coming from one location, from one speaker, but somehow there's 3 speakers in this thing. I got no words. But like I said, it's basically a copy and paste job, plus or minus some ports and stuff. This machine has the same NVIDIA GeForce 320M and the same 16 gigs that this one does, and the same CPU as well, although you could get one of these with an upgraded CPU, which you couldn't in this one, but it's only a step up. It's the P8600 versus the P8800, so it's a 2.66 gigahertz CPU instead of the 2.4 from before, so yeah. And this one I have a 64 gig SD card put in it because, well, I wanted some extra space and I didn't want to take it up with the SSD, which this actually was sold to me with an SSD. But it didn't come with that originally. And the battery is perfect. Actually, the battery is basically perfect in both of these, although this one was installed by me, so it was a really crappy job. However, yeah. But yeah, the batteries, they last a decent amount of time. However, this one's battery has some issues that this one doesn't really have. I was playing Doom on this via ZDoom one night, and I even played some Project Brutality via LZDoom on this thing, which is quite intensive, especially for the GPU in this computer. And it ran pretty decently until about when the battery reached 50%, and then it just kind of shut off. The machine just died at half capacity, which is kind of weird. I didn't expect that. So yeah, some of these machines and the batteries might have some weird issues still. So yeah. Alright. Let's go with the... what the hell? Okay, let's go with the oldest MacBook Pro in this room. No, wait. Oh yeah, the oldest and then the third oldest. And then we'll go on to the biggest. So this is a 2006 MacBook Pro. This has a Core Duo processor, not a Core 2 Duo processor, so it's one, slower, and two, 32-bit, which means you can only run up to macOS X 10.6 Snow Leopard. Which is alright, I like Snow Leopard, but it's old and can barely run anything, so yeah. But because of that, this machine can run software that you wouldn't expect it to, like Minecraft it runs and it's playable, which for reasons that will come apparent later, generally doesn't happen on these kind of computers. Especially ones this old. But running old software, running old macOS, can really go a long way to ensure a game runs playably. Because if you're on a newer OS like 10.11 El Capitan, you might not even get the game to launch, let alone be playable. So, yeah. This machine, I believe, has 2 gigs of RAM, although it might only have 1 gig of RAM. I think this has an ATI Radeon X1600 graphics processor, which is a little bit weird. This has a door for a something, I forgot what it's called. I'll go get it. That's what it's called, express card. This has a door for an express card, and well, you just slot it in and it plugs into the thing in the back, and well, this particular card will give you USB 3.0 capability on not this machine because this is too old, but machines that are slightly newer than this and up. So not quite on this machine, but yeah. Also, I bought a battery for this. It doesn't work worth the damn. Scam is on, get your shit together. And the CPU of this machine is, I believe, a 2 gigahertz, so 2.0 gigahertz Core Duo processor, so 32-bit. And what's kind of dumb about these particular MacBook Pros, like the non-unibody ones, like the first ones that were made, are that the drive slot, which is generally in the front in all of these, are bowed down. Because, well, there's only a piece of plastic and then a piece of sheet metal of aluminum preventing that from happening, which, if you put something on top of this MacBook, it's going to bow down. If you put your palm on the palm rest, it's going to push on this slot and it's going to bow inward. So as a result, this machine might not even read discs, but I think this one does. The other one that I'm going to show you now does not. Oh, one more thing. On some of these old non-unibody MacBooks, that starts to happen. The Apple logo seems to detach from where it's mounted within the display casing and move downward, and it looks really, really, really bad. Also, this MacBook, like one last thing, this MacBook has I believe a different lighting technology for the display panel. I think it's fluorescent, actually, which is kind of cool and kind of weird. And it lights up, when you turn it on, like when you go from 0 brightness to 1 brightness, it lights up like in a sequence. Like it kind of flashes across the screen. It doesn't all light up at once. It's really trippy and pretty cool. The next machine we're going to look at is the 2007 or 2008 15-inch non-unibody MacBook Pro. It says Apple certified reconditioned and has no battery because there are no working batteries that I have found for this. It says copyright 2007. So this, I did some Minecraft mod development on this, believe it or not, in 2015, 2016. So, yeah. the Kensington lock port is all screwed up. Wonder if someone pulled this from the lock position. So yeah, and this drive slot is also bowed inward, as most of these are. This one's new enough to where the Apple logo hasn't detached from where it's glued onto the top of the case here yet, so it doesn't look as bad as this one. But yeah, I believe this particular MacBook has an NVIDIA GeForce 8600M GT with 256 megabytes of discrete GPU memory. So it's not sharing memory with the rest of the system. Also this one has 128 megs of discrete GPU memory. I didn't mention that, but yeah. But what's weird is this machine runs Minecraft way slower than this one does on a newer OS anyway. So on 10.11, which is the maximum OS this one supports, this runs Minecraft way slower than this one, like about twice as slow, which is kind of nuts. This one's running an operating system much closer to when it came out, and this one is not, so that's probably why. Running an older OS will pretty much guarantee you a little bit of leeway in the performance department. However, it'll be much tougher getting a game to run on an older OS nowadays, unless it was specifically made to do that. I forget what processor this has and what the speed is, but I think this has 4 gigs of RAM and I think a spinning hard drive. I think both these have a spinning hard drive. This has its original. This has a 60 gig SSD that my friend put in it. Pretty sure I have the original drive somewhere. It's just not in here. I don't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, god damn it. I need to talk about the resolutions of these displays because they range from pretty horrible to pretty great. Resolution of this 2008 white MacBook. The display is 1280 by 800, so just barely HD, 720p HD. This one has the same resolution, 1280 by 800. And this also has 1280 by 800, which is kind of excruciating to use programs at. Like YouTube is barely usable at that kind of resolution. And these machines aren't much better, but they are much bigger, so they can safely accommodate a bigger resolution pretty comfortably. Like, it's actually pretty good for modern standards, but, well, not for scaling modern standards, but for normal monitor resolution modern standards, these are pretty good. 1650 by 1050, I think, which is in between, it's like in between 720p and 1080p, but closer to 1080p than 720p. So it's pretty decent, but it looks slightly worse than 1080p, but it still looks pretty dang good, especially on these displays. A bad display can go a long way to making something look trash, and these look pretty good, still, in 2024. I mean, they don't go as bright as you would want, but wait a minute. They're old. And actually, before we work on the rest of the MacBooks, I want to show you a machine that actually has a... Crap. No, I'm completely wrong. These MacBooks, the 2008, or the 2007 and 2006 MacBook Pros, no, they didn't go to 1650 by 1050. No, these are actually 1440p by 900, so like a MacBook Air from 2015 kind of resolution, which still looks pretty good on these displays, but it's a little bit low nowadays. But it's usable, if the hardware kept up anyway. But the reason why I thought that those were 1650 by 1050 displays is because I have one that is. Those were 15-inch MacBook Pros. This is a 17-inch MacBook Pro from 2007. This has the same NVIDIA GeForce 8600M, I believe. Actually, we can check this. We can literally open this machine up because, well, it does work and it is charged. I was playing Minecraft on this last night. And it's comically huge. Like, it's not going to come across on camera, but this thing is comically massive. Like, the speaker grills are deliciously huge. This thing is just dummy thick. Let's see. What the hell is graphics displays? Yeah, so there's a GeForce 8600M GT with 256 gigabytes of dedicated VRAM. And that runs Minecraft. Actually, that'll run the mod pack from 2012 Tekkit Classic pretty decently. It'll run like an Xbox game. It'll run just enough to have you have a good experience and really not much more. It basically runs at 60 FPS, even though it's not capped to that. It's basically staying at 60 FPS no matter what. No higher, no lower. Never gets to 70, but will stay at around 60 FPS for the entire time in that mod pack, which is kind of cool. And I got the weird, genuine early Minecraft on early Mac experience. It's not great, but it's oddly comforting. But yeah, all these machines also have a Express Card 34 slot. You can slot in one of these adapters. This one will actually work in this machine if I ran an OS newer than the one I was just running for you a second ago, because this one only works on like 10.11 El Capitan and later, which the latest operating system this can run is luckily El Capitan. However, it only has a 128 gig SSD, so naturally that partition I made to be the smallest. So it's slightly modern Mac OS under a 64 gig partition, which isn't great. So it's not really like I want to copy anything that big, but if I did, I would use that and it would work. The operating system it originally came with, I believe, is 10.4, so Mac OS X Leopard? No, Leopard's 10.5. That's what I am running on here. I installed 10.5 Leopard on here. Tiger, that's what it's called. 10.4 Mac OS is called Tiger. But I put Leopard on here, which is 10.5, because it's a little bit newer, and I don't have a Leopard installed it. I don't have a Tiger installed disk. We did, but my dad pulled it, got rid of it. But I do have a 10.5 genuine retail install disk, so I use that on this just out of curiosity, and it works. And it works pretty well, and had to do a bunch of driver stuff. What I was mentioning before about the Little Wiggle versions and having to screw around with programs to get them to launch. Yeah, Minecraft wouldn't launch with the Little Wiggle version that it would have come with in 2012. I had to put one from 2010 on it, which is 2.4.2 if you want to do that. And it involves putting resources in natives and all that kind of crap, and replacing the Little Wiggle.jar and Little Wiggle util.jar and jinput.jar in the bin folder and stuff. And you cannot run modern Minecraft on this. You can only run it from like Magic Launcher, which is actually what I used to get Tekkit up and running. I just set that as a Minecraft folder and just told it to run from that, and it did. With some tinkering for this particular machine anyway. And yeah, the 8600M did work, and it worked pretty well on this, on the OS that came with. On 10.11, I can't say much for that. It doesn't. But this has a This has a display that looks absolutely fantastic, and it is 1650 or maybe 1680. So yeah, but I'm just gonna say 1650 because that's what I know. It's display resolution of 1650 by 1050, which is pretty good, and it's close enough to 1080p that it looks pretty well, or it looks pretty amazing on this kind of display. And yeah, this battery is pretty chunky, and it's really only about 80 watt hours, which is not great, especially for how much power this draws just in general. But when gaming, it lasts about an hour, which is pretty good for this long ago. This thing is freaking, oh my god, this thing is, how old? 2000, if it came out in 2007. This thing is, I don't know, I can't do math. I think it's almost 20 years old. I think this is like 17 years old. That is insane. This is a 17-inch laptop that is 17 years old, and it still runs Minecraft 1.7. Actually, I haven't tried that. I have no idea if it does, but I bet it would. If you actually tried to run it, and yeah, so kind of cool. I'm not sure how you would actually get that to launch, as Magic Launcher I don't think supports that, but yeah, pretty neat. Oh, I also don't remember what the processor is. I think it's 2.4 gigahertz, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's 2.5. Now here's a machine that, oh, balls, hang on. Okay, good, it's still implementing. Now here is a machine that has a 1650 by 1050 display as well, and has quite similar specs, although has an AMD GPU instead of a NVIDIA one, and is a desktop with actual good speakers. Oh, speaking of the speakers, in this 17-inch MacBook Pro, they're not great, but they're loud and but they're not punchy. Like they're loud, but they're not punchy, which means the volume just wavers back and forth, which is, I think, just how computer speakers were at the time. Laptop speakers did this in 2011, let alone 2007. So yeah, they're not great, but they're not bad either. But they have this weird kind of effect to them that, well, you don't really get on any other Macs. Let's see. This is a 2007 iMac. This is my grandmother's, who passed in 2020's, old computer. And, well, this now has a 500 gig SSD in it, but it originally had a 320 gig 3.5-inch hard drive, like full size, like right here. And this has a display resolution, which still looks stunning right, like today, by the way. It has a resolution of 1650 by 1050. So not quite 1080p, but you wouldn't really want to run this machine at 1080p because of its graphics, which is an ATI Radeon Pro 2600 with 256 megabytes of discrete memory. And this right now has 6 gigs of system RAM, although it originally had 3 gigs when I got my hands on it. And the CPU is actually the same CPU. Actually, yeah, it might be the same CPU that's in this 17-inch MacBook Pro, a 2.4 gigahertz dual-core Core 2 Duo. So, yeah, I might install Leprosy on here one day and try to run Tekkit on here as well, which I think I did maybe 2 years ago, but I forgot how that went. And right now, this doesn't run modded very well, but what machine from 2007 would? So, yeah, pretty cool. Oh, also the latest this can run is El Capitan, which it is, and the earliest, which I think it came with, is 10.4.11 Mac OS X Tiger. But if I were to downgrade it, I would just put either 10.6 on it, which I would have to get a disc from somewhere. I don't know where to get a Snow Leopard disc nowadays. Or, okay, because bringing my own doesn't work. Or I'll just install 10.5 on it, because I have some Leprosy discs. So, yeah. Oh, it also has its DVD drive, or Super Drive as they call it, mounted sideways, which is kind of weird. And it doesn't run slowly either. It's pretty fast. And this thing's speakers are amazing. Okay, they're kind of bad for standards of today, but for an old Mac, these are incredible speakers. Pretty bassy. The high end is a little bit weak, but everything else is awesome. And it goes pretty loud too. And yeah, of course it has a 1080, no, definitely not that. As this is a 1440, oh my god! This has a 480p standard definition webcam and a microphone up top that you can barely hear nowadays. I'm not sure why that is, maybe I screwed something up inside it, but yeah. Okay, let's get the rest of the desktops out of the way. So downstairs I actually have a Mac Mini from 2018. It's a 6-core i7 model that was actually my dad's, and it kind of still is. I used it for video encoding up until I got an encoder PC specifically to do that, but it's still downstairs and I don't want to go get it plugged in and everything, so yeah. But it's basically like a normal 2012 Mac Mini body, but it's slightly has much newer ports on the back, and it's space gray, like a space gray iPad. But anyway, so my first computer was this particular 2005 Mac Mini G4. This has a DVD drive in it. This is the first Mac Mini model, actually, although it was the middle spec one. This is a 1.42 gigahertz PowerPC G4 processor, so horrible. I can't remember what the graphics processor is. It's equally trash. And this is a 2005 Mac Mini with a 40 gig hard drive, I think. And yeah, I used this until my dad got me a 2011 Mac Mini that ran games a little bit better. I was playing Club Penguin at the time, and this wasn't really good enough for that. So he got me a 2011 Mac Mini, which is a lot like what this 2011 Mac Mini is. I think this might have a gig of RAM, but I think it actually has 512 megabytes of RAM, so that's awful. But it does have a discrete GPU with discrete 32 megs of memory, whatever it is. I think it's AMD. But later he upgraded me to this 2011 Mac Mini, which has had a life of its own after mine. And yeah, it's just like the newer, it's just like the newest ones, except just with older hardware in it, and older ports and everything and stuff like that. But this has, I believe, 2 gigs, no, I think this actually has 16 gigs of RAM. It got upgraded later, but it originally had 4. Has all the ports on the back. This has the Intel HD Graphics 3000 for the graphics processor, which is trash, and but it has a dual-core 2.5 gigahertz Intel Core i5 CPU from 2011. So kind of bad. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like a 2011 MacBook Air, just without a screen, keyboard, speakers, or mouse or anything, but slightly faster, but with the same crappy graphics. So yeah, this is a 500 gig hard drive. However, I believe that's actually limiting this machine a lot. The graphics also do that, but the CPU is not horrible, so theoretically this could play games, but the hard drive doesn't really want to let it. It's led a long life, it's tired. But between those two machines, here's a 2009 Mac Mini. I used to have 2 of these until I gave one to Garrett, my friend, which is a slower model, the 2.2 gigahertz model, but this is a 2.53 gigahertz Core 2 Duo from 2009, and this actually does have an NVIDIA GPU in it, the NVIDIA GeForce 9400M, which was what the MacBooks before, which is what the MacBook in between this and this would have had, 2010 and 2008. So the 2009 MacBook would have come with, it would have actually looked like this MacBook Pro, like exactly like it, except it would have had a really bad GPU in it. I mean, slightly worse. I mean, it's about as, it's a little bit worse than the GeForce 320M that's in this MacBook, but yeah, it's slightly worse. But it still runs Minecraft mod packs, really badly, but it does run them. So equally as bad, but yeah, it's in the weird, it's in the same form factor basically as the 2005 model, although the top is more yellowed on the 2005 model. Probably because it's older, but I think mostly because they changed how the composition of the top case was in between the 2007 and 2009 models. Because the 2007 models yellow like the 2005 models, but the 2009 ones don't. But this was the last of this form factor, and this has a whopping 5 USB 2.0 ports on the back, whereas the 2005 one only had 2, so that's kind of weird. Also, the ports changed drastically. Like this one has a full DVI port, this one has a mini DVI and mini display port as well. So not as useful for general Joes, but for power users, that was pretty good to have. I think that was how this supported 2 displays. This one only supported 1, and this one seems a lot lighter than this one. Although that's just because this one's older than this one, so the intervals have changed a little bit. However, from a 40 gig hard drive, I think this has a 250 gig hard drive from a random MacBook Pro that I used to have. I don't know why I had that in here. It just does not want to run with that, so I'm not sure why I did that. At some point I'll take it out, but yeah. So it's a weird kind of in-between Mac. So yeah. Also, I think the 2009 Mac Mini that I have here has 4 gigs of RAM, maybe 2, but I think it has 4. Alright, now for one of the weirdest Mac Minis ever made. I think it might be the weirdest, or among the weirdest. That's because it's like the 2011 Mac Mini, but in 2010, it had a DVD drive, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so this has a super drive in it. It's a Mac Mini with a super drive and with the design that they have nowadays. And it originally had a super drive. So yeah, kind of weird. Slot loading super drive. This has 2 gigs of RAM, a 320 gig hard drive. It's basically a carbon copy of a MacBook Pro from 2010, or even just a normal MacBook from 2010. It even has the NVIDIA GeForce 320M. So these basically all have the exact same freaking specs, which is crazy. So yeah, it's kind of weird. I think I got this for like $50 or something on eBay, but yeah. 2 gigs of RAM, same 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo processor, equally as bad, but in a desktop form factor with HDMI on it, which is actually kind of useful for me. But that super drive is slow, even slower than the laptop ones. But so what's kind of weird about Macs is they have server versions of them. After the Xserve was discontinued in 2009 or in 2010, Apple started producing server versions of already built Macs, just with like server software on them and server specific features. So they had Mac Pros that had server specific software on them and were sold as Mac Server or Mac Pro servers from like 2010 to 2012. And yeah, even the 2013 Mac Pro got that treatment too. But Mac Minis also got this treatment because, well, some people just didn't need all that power of the Mac Pro, so they would buy a Mac Mini server, except I don't have one of those, not in this model anyway, from 2009, but they sold Mac Minis that didn't have the DVD drive. They didn't have a super drive, and they had a second hard drive in these in place of that, which is kind of goofy, but they did that. There's even modifications you can do to a lot of MacBooks to replace the DVD drive or super drive internally with a hard drive enclosure, which is pretty cool. You can have 2 hard drives in a laptop, 2 hard drives in a freaking Mac Mini. And with the Mac Minis, that was actually an advertised feature from Apple. You could buy it with 2 hard drives. And it would come with the server software and everything, and yeah. And what's weird is, here's a 2010 Mac Mini server. Wrong way. There you go. It doesn't have the super drive because this actually has 2 hard drives in it, and the second hard drive is occupying the slot, or the slot, or the space internally that the DVD drive or the super drive would have. But internally this has the same GeForce 320M and the same 2.4 gigahertz Core 2 Duo as the MacBooks, and even the 2010 Mac Mini just doesn't have a super drive. It has a second hard drive in place of it. And it actually has 2 7200 RPM hard drives, so they're faster hard drives than the laptop hard drives that would be found in 2010 Mac Mini like this, which has a 5200 RPM, and in really old laptops it's 4200 RPM. Glacial speed. This is a 5200 RPM hard drive, just like pretty much all MacBooks from 2005 to 2012. So yeah. So all of these machines have basically the same exact specs. Am I missing any? Now, they basically all have the same specs. 2 Mac Minis with slightly different configurations. One has a super drive and the other has just a second hard drive in place of it. And then a MacBook from 2010. And then a metal version of it sold as the MacBook Pro from 2010 as well. Really, really weird lineup. But what's even cooler is they made, I don't even know where the hell it went. In 2008, when they introduced the 13-inch MacBook Pro, I don't have one of those here, they changed the design from the chunky PowerBook G4 kind of style of machine, like really chunky, to a, is this it? Yeah, that's it. To a much cleaner looking unibody version. And then they introduced a new 13-inch MacBook to go along with that, so it's a little bit smaller. The downside of this is or the upside to making a bigger MacBook is, well, it could fit pretty much the same internals in it, just in a better form factor. Here's the drive, ports, you know, everything. Although on the bottom, let's get the old piece of crap out of the way. Although on the bottom, this has some secrets. Because people wanted to be able to, or because Apple wanted to keep the functionality of having a battery to be removable and RAM to be serviceable and everything that they had on MacBook models going back a long time, they wanted the same capability for the new unibody MacBook. Granted, they only did this for 1 year, but that's how you can identify an early 2008 or a 2008 unibody 15-inch MacBook Pro. It has this switch with a door you can open. You can get to a hard drive, or to get to the machine's hard drive, get to the battery, and I think if you take out the battery, I think if you take out the battery, come on, there you go. Yeah, if you take out the battery, you can not access the RAM. But it gives you more access to screws that open up this entire plate, which I put back in. Okay, I thought I took them all out, but I put some back in. Cool. But if you take this entire plate off, you could replace the RAM as well if you wanted to, but this gave you access to the battery, which is more compact than it was before. So, yeah, pretty cool. And this feature was only found on the 2008 unibody MacBook Pro 15-inch. Jesus, can you just go in, please? Oh, I was putting it on wrong. Go figure. But yeah. So it had the little access door, but otherwise left basically the same. This MacBook doesn't work. Sadly, I don't know why. But this model of MacBook does have a display resolution of 1440 by 900, so not too great, but it was there. The resolution was there, and it matches, you know, the later MacBook Air displays. So yeah, pretty good resolution. Although it's a little bit cramped for nowadays, it works pretty well in this kind of form factor, and most websites still support it and feel pretty comfortable. And YouTube's just getting a little cramped at these lower resolutions, though. But apart from that, pretty good resolution. 480p webcam, of course, and a microphone somewhere. And the speakers, they're all right. Oh, that's another thing. All of these Mac Minis, they all have speakers. And what's kind of weird is the first Mac Mini's speakers, the 2005 model, its speakers are actually it's one speaker, it's pretty loud. And the one speaker in the 2009 one is much quieter. So it's a little bit weird. I don't know why they downgraded the speaker. But then in the 2010 unibody model of the Mac Mini, they had a speaker, of course, but it wasn't as good. In 2011, it got improved. In 2018, it got improved again, and now the most recent 2023 Mac Mini, which still basically has the same Mac Mini design, has a much louder speaker that works much better. But in 2009, these Mac Minis basically had the same speaker, like a speaker that was the same one that was found in one side of a 2008 MacBook. So, kind of crappy. But they worked, they chimed. So yeah, and with the increased size of the unibody MacBook came better speakers. Marginal better speakers, but better speakers nonetheless. So yeah. Oh, this also has, this is carried over the non-unibody MacBook Pro's models thing about the express card slot. You could slot an express card slot in here, or express card into the slot and give it USB 3.0 or a network jack or whatever you wanted, whatever you could buy an express card form factor, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I bought a battery for this, brand new off of eBay, to try to see if I could get this machine working. I couldn't, and not even my friend Garrett, who's a wizard with these things, could get it to work either, so I don't know what the hell's wrong with this. I'm just using it as a prop. So we just saw the non-unibody MacBooks turn into the unibody MacBook Pros. So they got rid of their chunky-ish design, but I mean, by modern standards, they're still pretty chunky, but back then, they were nice, sleek, and modern. And what's kind of weird about this 2008 unibody MacBook Pro is this actually has 2 GPUs in it. This has an NVIDIA GeForce NVIDIA GeForce 9400M, just like the 2009 Mac Mini did, which is like a worse version of the GeForce 320M that's in these MacBooks. So yeah, it's like a worse version of that, but it's the power saving mode. But when you use like an OpenGL application like Minecraft or a video game or whatever, it would switch over to its high powered graphics, which is the NVIDIA GeForce 9600M GT, which they're not great, but they're there. And they have 512 megabytes of discrete graphics memory, so much better than the crappy 9400M graphics, with its 256 megs of shared memory, of course. So yeah, 2 GPUs, kind of wild. And they're both from NVIDIA, which would never be seen onward. Alright, so you knew this was coming. So they had 15-inch and 17-inch MacBook Pros until 2008. Now, they took away the old MacBook Pros and gave us new ones. So they gave us a unibody 15-inch, a unibody 13-inch. But where's the big boy? Where's the 17-inch? Well, in 2009, they delivered. They gave us a 17-inch unibody MacBook Pro. This one's actually a 2010 model. But they're basically the same. I don't think they had the door, like in 2009, the unibody MacBook Pro line, they removed the access door on the bottom of them. This is a 2008. So yeah, they removed that from the 15-inch, but they introduced the 17-inch MacBook Pro, which had a 96 watt-hour battery, which is pretty close to the maximum that you can actually make laptop batteries. Because if you made them any bigger than 100 watt-hours, you can't take them on an airplane. So yeah, no one's gonna do that, but they should. You just wouldn't be able to take it on an airplane, which I would still buy. I would still buy it. But anyway, this is a 2010 unibody 17-inch MacBook Pro. And I actually bought this at an electronics flea market, the one down in San Jose at the West Valley College. I was there about a year ago filming a video that never freaking finished. And well, I got scammed a few times, but this one I bought for 30 bucks, maybe 20 bucks actually. And I bought this one and the 2008 unibody MacBook Pro. But this is a 2010 model. And this does not have, no wait, this does have 2 GPUs, but it's not like they have 2 NVIDIA GPUs. This has a GPU from NVIDIA though, an NVIDIA GeForce 330M with 512 megabytes of discrete GPU memory, which are its high-powered graphics, which are not very good, especially for modern standards. This can run up to Mac OS X 10.13, just like either of these 2010 MacBook Pros or MacBooks, but yeah, that graphics chip is just struggling to run programs on that. But if we ran the operating system that this MacBook would have come with in 2010 or something like it, so like 10.7 Mac OS X Lion from 2011 to 2012, that runs very well and would run games much better than, or older games much better than 10.13 high CRF would on this. So yeah, this has 4 gigs of system memory, I believe. This has a USB stick attached to it because, well, I wanted more storage, and I had to stick just a random SSD in here that I also bought from that flea market, which is a 250 gig Western Digital SATA 3 SSD, because it didn't come with a hard drive. But yeah, this thing is comically huge, has a massive battery, has the slot again for the express card, which on this machine is incredibly useful because, well, the fastest way to transfer data off of this machine right now for me is through Ethernet, which doesn't really make any sense to most of you, but we have gigabit Ethernet around the house, and my storage drives are actually network attached, so I could just connect to them via the networking around the house and copy data off at a gig per second. So it's like 100 megs per second, which the SSD can barely do anyway, but that's just kind of how that is. So I'm like, well, what if I want to go faster than that? Well, the SSD in this machine is going to be kind of a sore point for that, but I do have this USB 3.0 express card that I can just slot into the slot. That'll give me USB 3.0 speeds on OSs newer than 10.11, as I said before, which is really useful for just getting stuff off of this, no matter what it is. So yeah, there's a massive battery, good slot for expansion. This is a pretty freaking good machine, although the graphics kind of suck. Of course, there's the aforementioned GeForce 330M, just like the 20. Oh crap! No, this is the first model of MacBook Pro to get away from the Intel Core 2 Duo line of processors, and instead go for the brand new Intel the Core i line. So Core i7, i3, and i5. This has a Core i5 in it. I think it's a Core i5 540M. So it's not too great. It's a 2.53 gigahertz chip, so it's kind of bad, but it's better at least than what the previous model had, which was a Core 2 Duo. So this one at least has a turbo boost on the CPU and has integrated graphics with it as well, which are Intel. They're just Intel HD graphics. I don't know what generation. It doesn't say 3000. It just says Intel HD graphics. But okay, the thing about this computer, this thing has a 1080p display, and the keyboard and trackpad are shockingly usable, and the speakers aren't terrible. They're actually usable, which is nuts. Like, okay, this display looks absolutely incredible for today, even modern standards. I used to use the 1080p display, and even now I use a 4K display on my laptop, on my main laptop, and my main monitor on my workstation. This still looks absolutely stunning. I mean, one, because there's a cutie there. This isn't a cutie, but this is, and absolutely amazing. But the power draw is a little bit much. But this has a 96 watt-hour battery, so you think it'll last a long-ass time, which, yeah, compared to like 2007 MacBooks it might, but no, it doesn't really. It runs hot, and it doesn't run for very long. It runs for about an hour and a half doing any kind of gaming before it shuts off, which is pretty good for even modern standards, but it goes to about 2 hours if you're watching YouTube. So yeah, not too great. And the Intel HD graphics, of course, suck donkey ass. So you'll always want to be using the GeForce 330M if you can, because the Intel graphics suck so hard, even for just web browsing. It's so horrible. You do not want to do it. And even then, the 330M sucks anyway. And it's a giant shame too, because this machine has a awesome screen, nearly perfect display, 1080p. Actually, it's 1200p. It's 1920 by 1200, so it's even better than 1080p. But you're not really going to be able to take advantage of that because of the crappy graphics. And I'm pretty sure Apple were fed up with this, as later on, the next year actually, they decided to screw NVIDIA. Where is that MacBook? Oh, I know where it is. Okay, maybe I don't. Where the hell is it? Oh my god. Okay, I'm fucking stupid. So Apple decided to say, screw NVIDIA. We're gonna produce a MacBook with AMD graphics and it's gonna be awesome. And it was. This machine is quite possibly my favorite MacBook ever made. It doesn't seem to have any problems until you look at coverage from back then and you'll realize these machines had extreme levels of graphic failure. I couldn't really figure out why, but I remember watching multiple YouTube videos on these MacBooks from 2011 that say that it's because of a defect with the motherboard, which I could believe. But going from this 2010 MacBook Pro on an SSD of all things to this 2011 MacBook Pro on a freaking spinning hard drive, on its original spinning hard drive no less, this is much better. This is easily twice, 3 times, 4 times the performance of that 2010 MacBook Pro. And it's basically the same thing, they just made it better. And this is actually the second iteration of the 2011 MacBook Pro, I believe. I think these gains are all because they switched to a quad-core CPU instead of the dual-core i5 found in that other one. This is a quad-core i7 MacBook Pro, and it actually has an AMD graphics card this time, the AMD Radeon HD 6770, which, if you remember, the Mac Pros back there came with workstation graphics, the Radeon HD 5770. This has the mobile variant of a workstation graphics card line that is pretty freaking high-end, and it's the year after that. This supports a lot of the newer APIs that you need to run a lot of newer-ish games. Not quite Doom Eternal, but like Doom 2016. This can run modern Minecraft at 60 FPS while you're screen sharing Discord in the background and recording with OBS. If you try to do that on this 2010 MacBook Pro, just a year older, or any other laptop here, except for ones that I'm going to talk about shortly, it would run like dog crap, 2 FPS for about 10 seconds before it melted straight through the floor, melted the sun, and melted the universe. But this machine is so much better, just the internals are so much better, that you could use this. You could actually use this thing in 2024 for general tasks. You could probably run macOS, what are the newest macOS? macOS 14, if you really needed to with a patcher or something. You could probably run that just fine on here and it would do pretty well. And at an actual resolution of 1080p for the display, it's not doing any weird scaling. Your programs will just run. They'll just do what they have to do. And of course this has the Intel HD graphics, and they're the Intel HD graphics 3000 from 2011, so the equivalent of, well, this Mac Mini's graphics, which you'll actually want to do because, the graphics don't suck hard enough to make the trade-off not good enough for you to actually use them. This machine gets horribly hot. It gets probably a third hotter than this. And that's really saying something because this will burn your legs. This will burn your legs and then burn the sun, even while just watching YouTube. So I think it's safe to say that whatever defect that they were saying was with the motherboard on this was because of heat. Of course it was. Heat kills anything. Heat will kill you, and heat will kill a laptop if it's hot enough. And yeah, this thing gets excruciatingly heated. This acts like it's in an argument with itself, just extremely heated all the time. And I don't really know why, because it shouldn't be drawing that much power. And the fans are huge in here. But I don't think enough air is being pushed out here for it to really sink all the heat off. So yeah, but while it's doing that, while it's being as hot as hell, it still has the same 96 watt-hour battery as the previous model. It still has the same beautiful 1200p display, which is just above 1080p, and a quad-core processor from 2011. So not bad, but also not great. There are still new machines being made nowadays that can't meet the performance of this. That's crazy. I'm not talking about Chromebooks either. I'm talking about like actual laptops with Windows on them. And even on a hard drive, this beats out pretty much every other model in existence until like 2012. Well, okay, the 2012 15-inch. I had one of those. I used it for a long amount of time, and well, it definitely beats this, but just barely. Like, this is an amazing computer. This is easily the perfect 17-inch MacBook Pro ever made, and there will never be a better one. Everything has a purpose, everything's great, and you can even control it remotely. If you really wanted to use this as a TV of some sort, or a media center, you could use a remote that they sold separately with these MacBooks that controlled like an infrared receiver here, and you could play and pause YouTube videos. You could still use this in 2024 for its intended purposes from 12 years ago. That's crazy. And its speakers don't even suck. Okay, they kind of suck, but they made just enough improvements over the speakers in this machine, which were already not bad, that this actually has bass. And I was going to do a video showcasing how much better the speakers are, but I couldn't really get a good test. I mean, I could hear the difference, but it wasn't good enough for a YouTube video. This isn't good enough for a YouTube video. Why am I even doing this? Well, because I just want to show things, and this thing is so amazing, I just really wanted to show it before I can. So that's what I'm doing. This thing is incredible, and I'm hoping this video isn't sucking too hard for you. And of course it has the door for the USB 3.0 card, because this was just before MacBooks got the USB 3.0 upgrade that they were looking for. This still has USB 2.0, but this has Thunderbolt. This has an 8 gigabit per second interface bolted right on the side of it. That's awesome. This has MagSafe. Like, oh my god. This can run macOS from, like, I don't know, a million years ago up until, okay, I think this is technically still stuck on 10.13 High Sierra, but you could patch it. You could patch this OS and run it and run macOS 14, the newest macOS there is right now, on computers that are easily 8 times as powerful as this. But this is when computers started to get the jump between the ARM Macs and the Macs that came right before it. This is that same jump, except twice as big, basically, for the time. It just, everything got more efficient, more powerful, and faster all at the same time. So, yeah, and this is the peak of when that was going on, and it really does show. I would daily drive this, no problem. This thing is awesome. Of course, I don't want to kill it, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep this running for as long as I can. Because who knows, maybe this is the only working one on the planet. Who knows? And I'm just so thankful that I got a chance to use it. Pretty much this is the perfect MacBook. Everything after this is basically downhill, in one way or another. This thing is as good as it could possibly have been. So, yeah, we must move on past this. Now, what's the next MacBook? That one was freaking excellent, but in 2012, after that year's normal Unibody MacBook upgrades to better quad-core CPUs and an actual NVIDIA GeForce 650M with a whole 1 gig of VRAM. This has 1 gig of VRAM. That's awesome. But yeah, in 2012, the 15-inch got the same treatment, and well, it got faster and better and more efficient and everything, and the speakers got a little bit better. But in 2013, or in 2012, like late 2012, there was a redesign to all MacBook Pros. They made them a little bit thinner. They took away the hard drive and the super drive, so you couldn't play DVDs in your MacBook anymore or anything like that. Couldn't play CDs. And so instead of upgrading to Blu-ray, that's what they did. And they put better batteries in them and everything like that. Made them thinner, made them cooler, made them more efficient. But this also kind of made the graphics processor much slower because it was pushing more pixels, because what they did is they started making the MacBooks drive a Retina display, which in 2012 that was a bit much. Running a 1440p display with Intel HD graphics is an awful idea. That is just such a bad idea. But they did it, and then they realized that they screwed up. And about a year later, they decided to make a 13-inch MacBook Pro in basically the same form factor with a dual-core i5, because in 2011 they upgraded the 13-inch MacBook Pros, the chunky ones, to i5s. Of course, they were only dual-core, of course, but yeah, that took a good 10 years to stop being the case. But for the foreseeable future, 13-inch MacBooks were stuck in dual-core. So this one's no different. This is a dual-core i5, I believe, 2.5 gigahertz. Maybe it's an i7. It's an i5, 2.4 gigahertz Intel Core i5. This is from late 2013, and this has this display. It looks like 1440p by 900 in the settings, but what it actually is 2560 by 1600. At least that's what Apple says. I can turn the resolution all the way up to 3360 by 2100, which looks kind of ridiculous, and I don't think that's actually meant to happen. I don't think that kind of resolution is what this is. I think this is 2560 by 1600, and those are the actual pixels that are on this display. But of course, running it like that is quite ridiculous on a 13-inch display. So what do? Well, they made the OS and the GPU basically scale everything, scale the UI and multiply the pixels, and well, actually it's displaying the same amount of pixels. It's not actually binning any of them, but it's making everything else more zoomed in, therefore it just looks better, of course. macOS application icons and everything and UI elements were all designed to be at this higher resolution from like macOS 10.8 on and on. So all the icons support these higher resolutions that they need to. So they look very good. Also, because they didn't have the hard drive or the disk drive or the DVD drive or whatever to impede their invasion, they can make these machines thinner, which was a pretty cool decision. And this machine actually has a 74 watt-hour battery, which is just insane for a 13-inch machine from 2013. Especially since this 2010 MacBook Pro that has a battery that's easily twice the size in volume has a capacity of 50 watt-hours, which is kind of bad. But this one has 74. So it'll last a good long while, although the CPU is still kind of power intensive. So they realized that they should not, and they just cannot drive like a 1440p computer display with a freaking crackerjack HD, Intel HD graphics processor. So they upgraded the graphics, but how do they do that? Well, they can't put an NVIDIA GPU in here. I mean, I think they probably asked, and NVIDIA said no. So Intel was developing something called Intel Iris. Think of Intel Arc, but in 2013 to 2015. They did have pretty good mobile GPUs. And in fact, they don't actually behave like mobile GPUs. Okay, they probably behave like mobile GPUs, but Intel Iris is actually pretty good. So the GPU is now replaced with the Intel Iris graphics chip that was separate to the CPU. So it only had this one, but that's all right because this is a pretty good GPU. It's not, it was pretty good for back then, but it's still decent nowadays. It'll run Minecraft just fine, and I mean it'll max it out for sure, but it'll run it just fine. And yeah, it runs pretty well, and it's 8 gigs of RAM, and well, what they did in addition to the graphics was when these machines were made thinner, the storage got upgraded, but also downgraded at the same time. So solid state storage was pretty expensive, was very expensive. For like all of the 2010s, like prohibitively expensive, like you just couldn't make a computer with an SSD until like 2011. So in 2012, when they made these machines thinner, they took out the hard drive. but they still had to have storage, so they put an actual SSD in the laptop. Go figure. And it was a weird SSD, but it was an SSD and it was pretty fast, and made the OS boot in like 2 seconds, and it was pretty freaking great. And but the problem with that is the base model was always 128 gigs for like 8 years, and that's brutal. You do not want to get a MacBook with 128 gigs of storage, or even a desktop. The Mac Minis in 2018 started at 128 gigabytes of storage. That's dreadful. Anyone's going to fill that up. So this one is 256 gigs of flash storage. So this has an SSD and it boots the OS it originally came with, which is 10.9 Mavericks, which is actually my favorite version of Mac OS X, and it boots that in like 5 seconds, like cold boot. Okay, maybe 7 seconds cold boot, but that's still really impressive for basically a base model machine from 2013. And yeah, as I said, the graphics can run games, not very well, but it can definitely run Minecraft, and it runs Tekkit Classic basically flawlessly. And of course, it has an i5, and basically any other MacBook with an i5, an i7, or even an i3 turbo boosts, so this can turbo boost to a higher CPU speed than it needs to sometimes. So yeah, this machine can get pretty hot, but it has a fan that does a decent enough job of taking away the heat, so it gets a pass from that. And this machine can last a long time watching YouTube, or maybe like 2 hours, or maybe like 2 hours playing Minecraft or Tekkit or something on the battery, so that's pretty freaking good. And of course, I have a 1 terabyte SD card stuck in the side of it because this machine has dreadful storage, and I have 3 different operating systems on it, so that 256 gig SSD is split up against many different operating systems. So yeah, I have an SD card to add more storage to this machine. All right, past that, now that you see the Iris graphics, or now that you've heard the Iris graphics and how decent they can be, let's talk about the MacBook Air and its almost dreadful graphics and CPU. Less so now, actually. I thought the graphics of the MacBook Air from 2012 to 2015 were pretty dreadful, and they kind of were, but this MacBook Air has Intel HD graphics 6000, which are actually not bad. And in fact, you can play Minecraft pretty well, or at least old Minecraft pretty well, on them, but only if you you full screen the game. For some reason, if you don't full screen the game, the Mac puts like a quarter of its performance towards the game, which is really stupid. I mean, I guess that's how it runs so smooth, right? You gotta do something. So, well, they did that. So you have to put the game in full screen mode, not maximized, in full screen mode, and then it will run pretty well. I only figured this out recently, like in the past 2 years or so. And I tried it on this machine just off a whim, and I ended up playing for like 2 hours on its battery. Like, its battery is only like 50 watt hours, but it lasts a while. I mean, the processor is only the processor is only running at 1.7 gigahertz. Okay, maybe it's running at like I think it can run up to 2.6 gigahertz. And they did make a faster version of this MacBook, which is from 2015, by the way, with an i7 in it, but it went a little bit faster, like 2.2 gigahertz. I had an 11-inch MacBook Air at 2.2 gigahertz, and it was pretty freaking fast. It was amazing. I was lost for words on how amazing that experience was, except it was tiny, which I actually loved. I love little laptops, and especially a tiny version of this, freaking awesome. But it overheated and freezed more often than I would like, and it wasn't worth it. So I sold that, but that was my main machine for 2 years or so, and I actually really loved it. So yeah, this machine is like that, just bigger and slower, which means it also has a bigger battery. The 11-inch I was using had about a 36 watt hour battery, so it's like an iPad battery basically, so not great. But this one has one about twice as big as an iPad battery in capacity anyway, so I got about an hour and a half running Minecraft on this, just playing it on the battery, and yeah, runs pretty freaking well. The keyboard's pretty good. Pretty much all the OSs that this machine can run at about the same speed, so yeah, no worries there. But for your info, I have Mac OS X 10.13.6 High Sierra on this machine. But the weird thing about this machine is, and the thing you gotta understand about turbo speeds for the processor is, they're never really, the CPUs, if you're doing anything on them, they're like never gonna run at their base speed. Unless they're thermal throttling, which some machines do, and we'll talk about that later, as that becomes a problem in the near future after this. So this is a early 2015 MacBook Air. This is actually my mom's old MacBook Air, like old. She had a 2017 one, which is basically the same, just with a very, very minor spec bump for the CPU, and now she has an M1 MacBook Air, which she's probably going to have for a long time. But this has a 1.6 gigahertz Intel Core i5. That's dreadful. But actually, macOS can run pretty well at on that kind of speed of a processor without even Turbo Boost. Like, I can turn Turbo Boost off right now, and macOS will run. I mean, it'll be dreadfully slow if I try to do anything intensive, but yeah, that's kind of expected. And that's because pretty much at all times, this MacBook's processor is running at 2.7 gigahertz. And of course, it's a dual core machine. I mean, what else is new? But yeah, so very infrequently, this machine will power down its CPU to its base speed, like 1.6 gigahertz. But pretty much at all times, if you're doing anything, even just watching YouTube, it will turbo to 2.7 gigahertz and maybe even higher. I think its maximum turbo speed is actually 2.7 gigahertz, which is good enough for most things. And it will run at 2.7 gigahertz at pretty much all times while playing Minecraft. So that's why that runs quite well. If you turn Turbo Boost off, Minecraft will still run, but at about half the speed. So yeah. So keep that in mind. Turbo Boost on this Mac effectively speeds this computer up twice what it would be otherwise. So don't even pay attention to the base speed. It's never running at that. So yeah, and the cooling, I used to think was pretty dreadful, but actually isn't. It's good enough. It's good enough for this machine. Nothing much else to say there. But what's weird about the machine previous to this one, this 2013 MacBook Pro, is that the speakers are not bad. I mean, they're not great. I mean, stuff to do with resonance inside of this machine makes the speakers sound really horrible at times. But it's got a really good field of view, or field of audibility. I don't know. It sounds wider than it should, and has a little bit of bass, and yeah, it's not horrible. It's listenable for sure. And this one has that same kind of aspect, but I think the speakers in this are more like if you made these speakers in this machine much louder at much lower volumes, so the curve is much higher there, had a little bit more bass, and went louder in general. And that's basically the speakers in this machine, and they're just closer to the surface. So yeah, they're like exactly what you would put in a laptop that is meant to be used just as a laptop, nothing special. It gets loud enough for you to hear anything. That's about it. That's about all you need. And that's what this machine has. So music sounds bad, but I mean, it sounds better than every Mac that came before it, basically. At least the first version of this did, anyway. And of course, the previous models of this particular MacBook Air, so like the 2010, the 2011, 2012, 2013, they all had worse speakers than this, but they were all pretty much the same. And even the 11-inch MacBook Air from 2015, the speakers they actually sounded better than the speakers than the speakers in this one, even though this one's bigger and should have better speakers for sure. So that's kind of goofy, but kind of cool at the same time. So yeah, I'm going to speed this video along because my camera's going to die before I get this done, so let's just get this over with. So you saw that, right? Some awesome computers. Now let's look at another really awesome computer, and the second to last one that I'm going to show you this time around, which of course has a 1 terabyte SD card stuck on the side because I wanted more storage on it. This is basically a 15-inch version of this 13-inch MacBook Pro from 2013, except this is a 2014 15-inch MacBook Pro, and this has a 15-inch display, of course. This one has some issues, but that's expected. I bought it that way. And it has a quad-core processor, much like the 2011 17-inch MacBook Pro did, as did every MacBook Pro 15-inch and up after that. Just slightly faster, slightly more efficient, and everything like that. And this one has an i7, of course, 2.5 gigahertz Intel Core i7, but of course, this machine will always turbo boost no matter what, really. So, I mean, this processor can run up to like 3-point-something gigahertz, just no matter what you're doing, watching YouTube, it'll probably run one of the cores at that. So yeah, don't even pay attention to the base core speed, doesn't really matter. This has 16 gigs of RAM, which is kind of weird because machines like this they all had 16 gigs. Like from 2013 to 2013 to 2018, basically, you could not buy a 15-inch MacBook Pro with more or less than 16 gigs of RAM. It was always stuck at that, which means nowadays, that's awesome, because now if you buy a 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 MacBook Pro, they will always be at 16 gigs of RAM no matter what, which is kind of awesome because that's a quite comfortable number to be at. This has it says the Iris Pro, Intel Iris Pro graphics. I don't know how that differs from the normal Intel Iris graphics found in the 13-inch version of this, but this says Intel Iris as well. I think it's the same Intel Iris Pro 5200 graphics as well, which I think has like 128 megs of discrete RAM dedicated to it, but the rest is shared with the system. It's 1.5 gigs of shared memory of the 16 gigs that are in the system. This is a quad-core Intel i7 processor, of course, and this is their Retina model, meaning this built-in display on this computer from 2014 has, that's not right. This display is basically 4K, which is nuts because, this is graphics, basically minor discrete graphics from 2014 that are driving this 4K display, and it's doing them pretty well. But there's some weird problems with scaling and CPU usage. Sometimes this machine will use a lot of CPU just doing mundane window manager tasks, which is a little bit weird. I've seen this machine use 25 watts just managing the freaking desktop environment. It's kind of weird. But anyway, so moving past that, the storage has 500 gigs of flash storage because it has an SSD just like the 13-inch one does. And this has 2 different partitions. One is a Mavericks, which is 10.9, my favorite macOS version, which this might have also come with. Boot Camp for running Windows on Macs, which I also have on the other one. Might talk about that in a later video as well. And it also has the main partition that I'm using to run macOS, which is, again, macOS X High Sierra 10.13.6, which runs pretty well on this machine as well, which is pretty cool. This has I believe a 90 watt-hour battery, maybe 88 watt-hour battery, so it's slightly better than the 13-inch one, and will last about maybe an hour and a half playing Minecraft, or 2 hours playing Doom or something, or a couple hours, or a few hours watching YouTube, if you're on the right browser. But anyway, this machine will get pretty freaking hot, no matter what you're doing. Even if you're just browsing YouTube, looking at porn, or even just watching YouTube videos especially, this will get incredibly hot, especially if you're not using a browser that knows how to use this hardware efficiently to decode the video and display web pages, which is generally Safari, or if you're running macOS slightly newer than this version that I'm running here, you can run Orion, which is like a Safari-esque web browser that runs much better than Safari, and it is about as efficient as Safari. If you're using Firefox or Chrome, that will make this computer heat up and melt through the floor. However, it will deal with it and it will push on, and it will barely even thermal throttle, which is kind of nuts. But the fact that it's even doing that means that there's a problem and you should probably go fix it, aka use Safari or Orion. But because this is 10.13, I have to use Safari because Orion, it only runs on Mac OS from 10.14 onwards. So yeah. Oh, so this is a 15-inch MacBook Pro, right? And it has the Intel Iris graphics. They didn't need to go further than that. And in fact, some of these 15-inch MacBook Pros don't even have any more than that. That is pretty much all a lot of these have. That was the base model of this generation. However, these 15-inch MacBook Pros could be upgraded at purchase, and they would install alongside the Intel Iris Pro graphics another NVIDIA GPU, which is the NVIDIA GeForce 750M, which you can runs just like the graphics of the 17-inch 2011 MacBook Pro would. Like it'll, when you run any graphics-intensive tasks or any graphics API applications, you will run. You'll be running these the NVIDIA graphics instead of the Iris Pro graphics. It'll automatically switch for you, but I manually switch over to them myself here right now. And as you can, you can't really see it, but I can see it's now running on the. So I'm running this display on the NVIDIA GeForce GT 750M, which has 2 full gigabytes of GDDR5 GPU memory, which is kind of weird because this 2010 has GDDR3 discrete GPU memory. So does this 2007 iMac. But this 2011 MacBook Pro is when the GPU memory, the discrete GPU memory in these laptops were upgraded from GDDR3 to GDDR5, making them way faster and more efficient. On this machine is no different. It's the same kind of memory that you would find in your GTX 1070 and your old computer, which I have mine right here, and even your well, up until 2018, this is what GPUs used, so obviously it's good stuff. And they used it in this one too, which makes it pretty freaking fast. It's not all that much faster than the Iris Pro graphics, because the Iris Pro graphics are just that great, and that's just because the NVIDIA 750M is not very good to begin with. However, it is so good that you should use it. So yeah. In conclusion, these MacBooks are freaking awesome, and if you need to, I recommend using these over like buying a 2016 one or whatever, because the 2016 ones have issues. I know that some people say that the 2011 MacBook Pros have issues, but really, if you buy anything past 2013 MacBook Pro wise and before 2016 MacBook Pro wise, you'll be doing good and you'll have a good experience, especially if you get one with the dual GPU configuration. So yeah, that's about it for this video. This has been iRed Redux. Thank you very much for watching, and let's go see what we have on this hard drive camcorder and on this Tascam audio recorder. Let's go. Oh yes.